Counter-Strike is one of the oldest and most respected online shooters on PC, still alive and thriving to this day. But it's also notorious for having some of the most toxic, racist, and anxiety-inducing players a gamer could ever talk to, let alone just play with. So, how was this the game that helped me overcome my fear of talking to strangers and become a leader in my everyday life? The year was 2007. Not far along after the release of Halo 3 in September, I had my buddy come over to play it with me since he was also the same friend I'd play the Halo 2 campaign with. His brother had a PS3 with Modern Warfare 1 on it when it first came out, and after being exposed to trash talking online at just the age of 12, he told me we had to talk trash to people in Halo also. That he saw his brother do it all the time and that it's the funniest thing ever. I mean, of course he'd think this is hilarious. What else would a 12-year-old find funnier than his brother telling people he slept with their moms? Many moms, and all at the same time too. Lucky for us, I had a few Xbox Live Gold trial cards that let us play online for a few days, as playing online was a foreign concept to me until I got my first Xbox 360. It was the first time I was introduced to the idea that not only can I play games with people who lived in different houses than mine, but I can also talk to them too, thanks to the starter 360 headset everyone had at the time. The only time I ever saw online play in person was when my buddy had the online attachment for his PS2, and showed me him and his brother playing online in Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal of all games. It was janky for sure, since the game wasn't mainly made to be online, but seeing a buddy figure out how to even play anything online impressed me big time. I felt like I was in the presence of some serious tech whizzes at just the ages of 12 and 14. Actually, that same buddy eventually went to become an engineer, drawing the best circles in his class. I wasn't surprised. So to have an online experience of my very own this time was a core memory to say the least. I vividly remember playing on the map The Pit, and my buddy, with his voice nowhere near hitting puberty, starts going off at people. It didn't even matter if he was doing well in the game or not. If he got a kill, he'd tell them they sucked balls. His, in fact. And when he'd get killed, he'd give the old hacker or lucky loser or dude, I have a life, of course you killed me. Like, it's hilarious no matter what people did in the game against him, he just finds some kind of childish verbal abuse to throw their way anyways. Although at the time, it did scare me watching him talk like that at first to total strangers. In my head, I still had the good boy mentality that you'd never say that to someone in public, so it both frightened and excited me what was unfolding before my soft, innocent little eyes. My boy corrupted me a bit that day, and in the middle of his squeaker tirade, he hands me the mic and goes, "Here, your turn." I had no idea what to say, so the only thing I could think of to do was a terrible Arnold Schwarzenegger impression of all things, since that was funny on YouTube at the time too.
Get to the chopper, do it! Go! Do it!
Instead of annoyance though, a teen clearly older than me thought I was hilarious, and sent me a friend request not long after that. I felt good about that. Older kid approval was a lot for me back then, and to make one of my first friends online was pretty cool too. Fast forward 5 years later. It's late 2012, I'm halfway through high school, and at this point, it's starting to near the end of my Xbox 360's life cycle. At this point, I played all my games to death, made a solid group of friends online, and the Xbox One was coming out very soon in 2013. Being a console gamer all my life, the rule was more or less that if the next generation console was on its way soon, that's when you decide to stay with the console you chose, Xbox in my case, or you switch over to PlayStation or Nintendo. Although at this point in time, there was another contender that was seeming much more enticing than the rest. The one where real gamers lived, where boys became men, where some of the games were even free to play. I was finally ready to buy an Ouya. It was a console that promised something others couldn't. Hope for a new age, something intense and real for gamers to finally chew on. It was a natural progression for every gamer my age to... Okay, it was a PC. It was a PC, everyone. You can all calm down now. Can you imagine? Oh yeah, I love the oh yeah.
Oh yeah! It is a very good idea.
So yeah, I decided to build my first PC. I was lucky to want a PC around this time, because the prices for all the parts needed for a decent build were cheaper than buying a console back then. It was relatively easy too, with all the tutorials out there, but I also happened to have my cousin who was deep into tech, so he helped me build it too. Once it was built, I was finally able to create my Steam account and play games I only saw clips of on YouTube at the time. The one I was most excited for actually was Garry's Mod, because I had watched a lot of machinimas made with it, especially this one series called the GMOD Idiot Box. If I had to condense everything that was PC gaming comedy into one clip, it It'd probably be this one from the series.
Hacks!
The sound effects, the maps, the ragdoll physics were all things I associated with PC gaming fun and capability, out of reach of my streamlined console existence. This and the famous Counter-Strike for kids lived rent-free in my head for the longest time, and still kinda does. Not to mention the infamous game modes like Death Run, Prop Hunt, and Trouble in Terrace Town, aka Among Us before Among Us was a thing. That took the gaming community by storm when gaming YouTubers were making clips of these game modes for weeks on end. All this hype, building up until this very moment, and now I could finally be a part of it all. Now, to be honest though, when I booted up GMOD for the first time, I was pretty disappointed. I get I needed to fiddle with its sandbox UI to get the most out of the experience, but again, coming from a streamlined console experience, looking through menus and tutorials on how to have fun in GMOD wasn't something I was willing to do anytime soon, so I opted out of any private games I'd fiddled around in thus far. I thought I could at least play Death Run, or something in a public custom server, right? So I tried. Oh no, what is this? What is th- oh no! I found out quickly that the game needed the actual textures from the respective games it was borrowing from, which was Counter-Strike Source to begin with. There were manual ways around installing the textures, but I just bit the bullet and bought a cheap Counter-Strike bundle that happened to be on sale at the time and played a few custom games here and there. Playing GMOD for a week or two, I did have fun, but the feeling of jank kinda set in again as I did compare the experience to the old Halo 3 custom lobby days. Halo was more limited, yes, but again, more streamlined and easier to approach, which was still my preferred bias at the time. Even playing Team Fortress 2 with friends, I had fun with that game too, but I started getting a sort of itch. An itch for something more of the real deal. The latest Valve shooter at the time that was more polished and relatively streamlined. I felt like I was finally putting on my big boy pants when I finally decided to buy CSGO. It was, to say the least, the first time I felt my PC was worthy to test its good enough limits. The first thing I remember I was stoked to play was anything on the map Office. As again, was a popular map in all those GMOD and CS videos I saw on YouTube that wasn't Dust 2. A map I actually never really cared about since that's not where the funny happened in my mind. So Dust 2 might as well have been Aztec to me. Although I unironically loved Aztec, but that's besides the point. I jumped into a hostage rescue casual match and was simply hit with a dose of starstruck euphoria when I was finally in the legendary map of all my YouTube viewing childhood. If I had to compare it to something, it was the equivalent of being on the actual movie set of one's favorite movie at the time. This is also where I naively stumbled into and saw firsthand the difference between console voice chat versus CSGO voice chat. I don't have any footage from the map or that day specifically, but here is a montage of clips I found on YouTube that should reflect what every CSGO player is very aware of when they enter a random public lobby in the game.
Because you're gay.
The hell of a guy, you're low. Yes.
Yeah, I know Call of Duty and Halo at the time was pretty chaotic, and can somewhat be close to this, but it was just not of the same caliber. Racism and debauchery was just way less reported and shielded from the player on CSGO. That was kind of the point of PC gaming. Just like 4chan in its glory days, free speech was the name of the game. No, Valve never condoned the behavior, but many gamers understood. If you go into a casual CS lobby, don't expect not to be called a racial slur, hear someone blasting their music in the background, or a bunch of nerds going off cringe mode galore. Now, I want you, the viewer, to keep in mind, all I've had the courage to do online at this point, gaming-wise, is make a bad Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, for a cheap laugh. After that moment over those 5 years, yes, I came out of my shell a bit, but I was still the respectful little lad I am to this day, not looking and actively avoiding conflict whenever possible. Wink wink to my Halo ODST video essay. A good way to put yourself in my shoes would be to imagine you had a very well-behaved, joyful but unintentionally cringy with their humor, 8-year-old little brother, who you then let play CSGO on your computer and enter voice chat. And yes, at this point I was technically about 17 years old at the time, but my innocent little self in his console-safe little bubble just did not want to get in the middle of any older teens or adults playing the game for any reason. Not even just the possible chance of getting flamed or bullied for the lack of skill alone.
B?
Oh, come on! The noise these wild animals would spew from their mouths was enough to keep me from entering voice chat myself. So I decided to stay quiet in all my games going forward. Now, all that being said, it was still nice in a weird way that I was amongst these animals, finally, myself. Feeling like some kind of messed up rite of passage for a first-time PC gamer now. So yeah, for many months I simply stuck to the game modes that talking in-game didn't really matter that much. Deathmatch, casual matches, demolition, and arms race. Which is to me basically just gun game from Black Ops 1, so I played that one the most at the time. I just really liked how it got me familiar with all the guns, and no one really talked in that game mode anyway. Now, you might be wondering how I did overcome that fear of competitive online voice chat eventually. That, my friends, can be attributed to my friends, or as I called them at the time, the Peter Rangers. Go, 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 go! No, he's gonna zeus me! He's gonna zeus me! No!
Oh! Double kill! Double!
Go, we.
I'm in it to win it! Oh! Oh! Oh!
Wait, you actually got it?
No!
We won the round.
He won the round.
He's got the Zeus.
He's got a Zeus! What a fucking cheater! Murk him, Peter, murk him!
I can't. I'm so bad at this game.
Oh my god.
Oh, Peter! You are a... Oh! Ah!
Disrespected.
So coincidentally, as a side note, me playing CSGO with my friends while talking to them on Skype was about the time I invented my whole Blue Ranger Peter persona. I had started to dabble in Twitch streaming as a naive teen at the time, and born out of boredom near the end of another CSGO gaming night with them, I, for no reason I can remember, took an old photo of one of my buddies and drew a Power Ranger costume over them in Microsoft Paint. I was bored, my friends thought it was funny, so I then made colored copies for them to have as their profiles on Steam too. We were born new again, now, as the Peter Rangers. A group of silver rank misfits that did their best to just have fun with the random 5th player in competitive. I can see now, reflecting back on this moment, it tying pretty well with the fact that I was shy online with strangers, that making the BRP persona was perhaps my subconscious way of shielding myself from online criticism. So if I was bad online, it was my persona that took the hits instead of the real me I really identified as. Although over time, my real life identity and the BRP persona would quickly merge into one entity unintentionally, blurring the line between an insult towards my persona versus my actual self. It almost worked. But when you're a young teen who believes he can be paid online for being himself, and a funny self at that, the whole persona thing falls apart quickly and kind of messes up one's perception of themselves, but that's a story for another day. Back to the CSGO games themselves, I was technically still in my own bubble by being in a private voice call on Skype with my friends while playing online with technically one stranger on my team at a time. I was worried about the enemy team's comments, yes, but I was more fearful of my teammates since they're the ones I was exposed to voice chat-wise the whole game, if I didn't mute them, of course. This would also be a good time to mention, though, that CSGO at this time allowed players from each team to talk to each other during the halftime transition, which typically went something like this.
Just report all of them.
Yeah, so that didn't really help at the time, and it was probably a good reason to remove that opportunity for players later on in 2015 when they did. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had been successfully growing my competitive competency and tolerance in the best way possible, a type of exposure therapy, if you will. Eventually, I found myself with many days alone with no friends online to play CSGO with, poor little me, as often as we used to. So I kept playing CSGO competitive as a natural progression of being exposed to it enough times with my friends. I had completed step 1 in what I have now put together in a 3-step system I personally created as I was making this video. Today, 5+ years even after then, I've gotten way better at talking to strangers online. So much so, I had a period in my Twitch streaming career where I was purposely trying to entertain them in voice chat in all sorts of ways. I had a series where I went around in VR chat and talked to strangers for some fun, improv, on-the-spot comedy. I even played many matches in Valorant where the goal was to get 1,000 laughs over time from total strangers using different ridiculous accents. How I got here now, from my timid beginnings, is again why I ended up making this 3-step system I mentioned earlier. Because to be quite frank, I really didn't know how I did it at first until I did some research into how do you deal with a bully online or even offline. I didn't know actually. I was lucky enough in my life to avoid bullies for the most part, so trying to come up with ways to tell you, the viewer, how to overcome toxic strangers online, which was something I still didn't know entirely how to do, or at the very least explain simply. Over time, I just did things like muting chat in League of Legends so I can solely focus on my gameplay improvement, and just paid attention from time to time to the good habits pro players had skill and attitude-wise. And I learned a lot, surprisingly, without having to watch hundreds of hours of pro gameplay. Without further ado though, I think it's time to explain what I found in my research for this video, and how to deal with the fear of playing online competitive games for the first time in voice chat, and going from that to almost feeling like a pro, where one is unfazed by any comment or uncomfortable situation one might find themselves in, and enters them all in complete calm and confidence, knowing exactly how to handle any bad situation thrown their way anymore. So at this point, if you're someone who's already comfortable with talking to strangers online, I think the biggest benefit out of this is to actually see how someone does overcome that fear, right? It's kind of a curiosity thing, which it was for me. So here we go. This is Blue Ranger Peter's 3-step system for overcoming your fear of playing with toxic players online. Or in other words, how to get used to voice chat in online competitive games, to put it more nicely. Step 1. Expose yourself. This is the starting principle of essentially exposure therapy, where you start with the easiest first baby step to exposing yourself to your fear. The focus? Being comfortable with being in the room without the pressure to perform socially. In my story, this is simply when I started playing with my friends only when I entered competitive mode. So just to lay this step out in its handful of layers one can follow practically, the first thing is play with at least one friend. Ideally a friend who's played competitive more than you. You have one less unknown person on your team, you gain the support of a friend being there, and if you do get flamed for any reason, they can have your back. They can start talking shit for you.
Bro, you're trash, bro. Shut up! Come on, bro. You gotta get you together, boy.
As a side note to this, I went even safer and stayed in my party chat, but to get that ball rolling faster, I'd recommend at least after a few games together, moving to in-game chat as soon as possible. Second, in-game info call-outs only. Just say hello at the start of the game, just to test the waters. See who says hello back, if they say nothing, or if they come right out of the gate with something completely unhinged. If the lobby is chill, focus only on saying call-outs and anything game-related. Examples are letting your teammates know where the enemy that killed you is, asking if anyone needs a buy, etc., etc. Low-level, neutral, objectively helpful interactions. Now, what if they're unhinged right out the gate, or later on in the game? That leads us to point 3. The one-strike mute rule. At this stage, your peace of mind is more important than the advantage from voice chat communication with teammates provides. If someone is a dick, mute them instantly. You are building a boundary muscle here, so you're allowed to have a low tolerance without explaining yourself when you do choose to mute someone on your team. The key here is to spend lots of time in competitive games until you naturally feel comfortable enough for the next stage. When this is totally up to you, but we're assuming you're a noob in this scenario, like I was when I started playing games of arms race, not knowing the callouts on the maps even at that point. So the next thing to improve on is your actual skill in the game. Stage 2. The montage. The focus here is to build what I like to call a shield of skill. When you have objective proof that you are competent, insults stop feeling like potential facts. It's like painting a room blue and having someone yelling at you it's red. You don't get angry or insecure, you just know they're flat out wrong. To reach that level of security, or confidence if you will, you have to move through the stages, what is typically known as the competence cycle. The cycle all people must go through to master anything in life. Phase 1 of the competence cycle is unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. This is where you've seen the game, but haven't really played it yet, so you kind of really don't know what you don't know. Phase 2 is conscious incompetence. You realize exactly what you're bad at. This would be you actually playing the game and catch yourself not knowing what to do at times with things like smokes, how to peek corners, callouts, etc., etc. Phase 3 is conscious competence. You can do it well, but it takes 100% of your focus. This is when you have to actively take a few seconds to remember what you're trying to practice as you practice it. Like a specific smoke lineup, for example. You have to remember the right angle, the right throw, the right whatever. You have to actively use your brain power to perform it. The fourth and final phase is unconscious competence. This is where we're trying to lead, where the skill is now automatic. Muscle memory, if you will. So essentially, you're kind of a pro in focusing more on the bigger picture of the match and minute details that can make the difference in winning it. It's like knowing the rules and when to break them finally. Now, the montage, my whole step 2, after this whole pre-knowledge on this competency cycle I had to give you, gives you a better understanding on where in that competence cycle we're focusing on. We're on phase 2 and 3 of it, so here's how you build practically that metaphorical shield of skill. Point 1. Practice your game skills. This one's obvious. Don't just play, you study. Use workshop maps and guides to master callouts and game sense. You're breaking the game as a whole into its small parts, practicing one skill at a time until you can put them all back together to see the bigger picture again with more clarity. Point 2. Recognizing people's patterns. After 50+ matches, you'll start to realize toxic players are fairly predictable. They use the same handful of insults over and over again. Bad. Uninstall. Are you trolling? Wow, what a whippersnapper. Once a threat becomes a cliche, it loses its power over you and stops becoming something you worry about anymore. Because something to remember is, not every opinion is equal. A silver player's critique doesn't carry the weight of a pro's advice. Often the loudest bullies are the most incompetent, in game and in real life. Once you see their lack of skill or their own low competency level, they lose their power over you. Trust me, it's happened to me, and it's a freeing moment when you realize it. Point 3. Own your mistakes out loud. Let's say you're last alive and you miss a headshot that could have won the round. Now, since the attention was already on you, I'd encourage you to actually make a comment on your performance out loud by saying something like, "Oof, my bad, I'm still working on my aim, guys." This in itself is actually a sort of filter to feel out your teammates' vibes. A teammate having a bad day might insult you initially, but then come around and offer a tip. Whereas a toxic bully will just keep swinging. Mute the latter immediately, of course. The guy who gave you a tip at least sees you're not intentionally trolling and want to work with your team to win and are open to advice from them. 4. Separate performance from value. It's silly to say, but it's important to remember you are a person, not a KD ratio. A bad bomb plant or a missed op shot is a data point for practice, not a reflection of your worth as a person. Separate yourself from the actions, and you can work on improving much quicker with less emotional baggage attached to it. Now, after some time, once your game sense and skills are at a level you're happy with, typically better than the average player, you can now not only feel confident in your performance, but help your odds of winning games by now focusing on the mental aspect of the game and helping others on your team. Stage 3. Ascension. This is a bit of a side note and kind of a disclaimer that this stage is kind of optional, but it's highly rewarding and fulfilling. It helps in all areas of life, so it's highly recommended you continue in this stage. Go on, take the red pill, it's strawberry, I swear. At this point, you've reached unconscious competence. You don't have to think about your crosshair anymore. It just goes where it needs to be. This frees up your mental RAM for something much more powerful, team chemistry. So the focus in this stage is now using your voice as a tactical utility to manage your and the team's mental state. The first point would be, act as the emotional anchor. Since you've already built your shield of skill, you no longer need to defend yourself. This frees up your mental bandwidth to essentially act as a team leader. When the lobby gets chaotic, your calm, objective voice becomes the anchor. People naturally follow the person who isn't panicking, so now you can be the person they need, not deserve. Second, keep your teammates cool. You now have the mental space to pull others out of their own heads. During the game, they can either be stuck on what recently went wrong in past rounds, or are becoming noticeably hopeless about future rounds. First off, it helps to remember the old adage, depression lives in the past and anxiety lives in the future. A common example of someone going through both could be something like if a teammate is tilted because the enemy opper keeps outplaying the mid. So not only do they feel like a failure from the last few rounds getting destroyed by them, but now are also throwing in the towel, because what's the use of playing if that's just how the future rounds are going to end? In these kind of moments, you need to remind them that anxiety is just worrying about a what if that hasn't happened yet. What if the next round goes well, actually? Both can happen. No one can predict the future, so pull them back to the present to make the latter actually possible and hopefully a reality. Third, let go of stubborn teammates. You will inevitably get a teammate who won't work with the team no matter what you say. In this stage, you treat them like a map hazard, like a landmine you just have to play around the entire game. Stop wasting any energy trying to change them and focus entirely on variables you can control, your utility, your positioning, and your impact on the remaining teammates. This also applies to, for example, the previously mentioned opper going mid that's always killing your teammates first. If you can't out-op him, outplay him. Put your ego to the side and accept the skill gap, and use your big boy gamer brain to work around straight up 1v1ing him down mid. Fun fact, all of history's greatest battles were not won fair and square. They were all won with some sort of tactical advantage on the enemy that he did not expect. So play with that in mind instead, Monsieur Napoleon. 4. Become the bully. Ethically, of course. At this point, you're so composed that you recognize tilting is just a tactic the enemy might use at this level to get you off your game. You simply don't fall for it anymore. Instead, you might even use that knowledge to strategically punch up, using high-level mind games or psychological pressure to throw the enemy off their game. In the Halo days, it'd be a simple teabag to get them mad. You can still do that, but even a simple all-chat message saying something like the infamous GG Easy could be enough. Actually, as a fun little detour, I found some of my favorites in researching that I'd like to share with you right now. Typing things like, is your name Owen? Owen12? Lamau? Typing bot_kick, player name. A simple yikes can be pretty effective, and this one's implying you're a filthy casual who's still dominating them by saying something like, hey guys, when do I unlock the heartbeat sensor in this game? Just totally disregarding any time they put into the game. Point 5. Punish their mistakes. Something I learned actually watching League of Legends coaches for a while was that after you've got your eggs in order, all you do when playing against other high elos is wait for your opponent to mess up their eggs, so to speak, and punish them for that mistake. You never compromise your win states and wait for them to step out of theirs. An example of this would be you setting up on CT side, the same way you've done 100 times where you've won most games by doing the setup without even thinking at this point, and you wait to catch the enemy in a spot they shouldn't be in if they were trying to play optimally. Each side should know the proper positions and counter positions, so catching the enemy when they're running up long instead of smoking first is an easy kill, for example. You're punishing their mistakes. Now, before we end off this section, a common question in the community that comes up around this is that, does it get better as you rank up? The toxicity is what they mean. In Silver, people are toxic because they're frustrated. In Global or Face It level 10, people are toxic because they're sweaty and obsessed with winning. What's found from time and time again is that the toxicity never truly disappears, it just changes flavor. This is why you need the shield of skill regardless of your rank. You don't play to escape toxic people, you play because you've become someone they can't affect. I'm looking at you, Marcus. The conclusion. The why. And now, after going through stages 1, 2, and 3 successfully, I congratulate you, as now you've finally achieved competence mastery. But now what? Where do we go from here? Why bother with all this for a video game? Hell, didn't this video just start with a story about a kid who was too scared to play online with bigger kids because he was afraid to be called out for being bad at the game, essentially? Do we really need to analyze all this just to play a game with people online? No, we didn't, but I feel all this would not only be helpful for people to understand why they may feel the way they do about online voice chats as I did growing up, and maybe this will help them. In a way, this video was kind of for myself, mentally and literally, mapping out how I overcame that silly but real fear of social competitive heat. And so this is kind of my little hodgepodge of closure for myself, and how I can understand for myself, how did I actually get here? And you're right, it is just a game. But this is also exactly why parents put their kids in sports. It's not necessarily because they want them to be a pro athlete, it's because sports are a competence incubator. First, you join a group of strangers. Second, you face the vulnerability of being bad at something. Third, you practice until you're objectively good. 4, you gain a confidence that no one can take away from you. I've tricked you into doing sports, sort of, not really. Haha, here is your complimentary touching grass, sir and or madam. But seriously, folks, the paradox of mastery is that you only pursue this path if you feel the urge to grow. Maybe you started because a bad experience hurt you, and you decided you'd never be a victim again. Whatever the reason, remember, how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you can master your emotions and your skills in the high-pressure environment of a competitive match, you can do it in a job interview, a difficult conversation, or a new hobby. You've built the shield, You've mastered the cycle. Now? Well, go play the game, I suppose. It's funny, isn't it? All this talk just to enjoy a damn game. Oh, how funny we are. Turning hills into mountains so that we may stare at them in fear, rather than conquer them for what they truly are. Simply another bump in the road to somewhere others seem to go, for some reason, we don't even fully understand ourselves.